What if I told you the man who explained why everything falls to the ground didn't just study the universe, he tried to break it? Not metaphorically, literally. He stared at the sun until he could barely see. He pushed objects into his own eyes just to understand light. He locked himself away for months, obsessing over secrets he believed were hidden in nature and even in the Bible. This is not the version of Isaac Newton you learned in school. This is something darker, something deeper. Because behind the famous apple story was a man who didn't just discover gravity, he uncovered laws that made the universe feel mechanical, predictable, almost controlled. But the more he understood, the further he drifted away from everyone else, and what he found may have changed him forever. Stay with me, because this story doesn't just explain science, it reveals what happens when a human mind goes too far. It begins in 1643, in a quiet, cold part of England where nothing extraordinary was supposed to happen. A baby is born too early, too fragile, too small, so small that people whisper he won't survive the night. No one is planning his future, they are preparing for his death. That baby is Isaac Newton. But before he even takes his first breath into the world, tragedy is already waiting for him. His father is gone, dead before Newton is born. A child enters life already half alone. And then comes the moment that truly changes everything. His mother remarries, but she doesn't take him with her. She leaves him behind. Not for a few days, not for a few months, for years. Newton is handed over to his grandmother as if he is something to be set aside, something not worth taking along. Imagine being a child, standing at the door, watching your own mother walk away, knowing she's not coming back anytime soon. That kind of silence doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you. From that moment, something inside Newton begins to close. He stops trusting people, stops reaching out, stops behaving like other children. While others laugh and play, Newton watches, quietly, carefully, almost like he's studying them, trying to understand something invisible beneath their actions. He spends most of his time alone, building strange little machines, tiny windmills that spin on their own, mechanical toys that move in ways no one ever taught him, simple objects behaving in complex ways. It's as if, even as a child, Newton believes something most people don't, that the world is not random, that everything follows rules, hidden rules, and if he can just figure them out, he can understand everything. But beneath that curiosity, there is something else growing, something darker, something he keeps hidden. Years later, Newton writes a private list, not of achievements, not of dreams, but of sins, and not actions, thoughts, disturbing thoughts, violent thoughts, the kind of thoughts most people would be too afraid to admit. One of them stands out. He writes about imagining burning his own house down with his mother inside. Let that sink in. This isn't just anger, this is something deeper, something unresolved, something that has been building since the moment she left him. That thought never becomes reality, but it never truly disappears either. It stays there, quietly, in the background of his mind. And maybe, just maybe, that intensity, that darkness, is part of what drives him. Because Newton isn't just curious, he doesn't just want answers, he needs them, obsessively, relentlessly, as if understanding the world is the only way to make sense of what he feels inside. And that need will push him further than anyone has ever gone.
Years later, Newton arrives at University of Cambridge. It is a place buzzing with ideas, arguments, and ambition. Students are trying to impress, to be seen, to prove they matter. But Newton is different. He doesn't try to stand out. He doesn't speak much. While others debate loudly, he stays in the background, watching, listening, thinking far deeper than anyone realizes. Then suddenly, everything changes. In 1665, a deadly disease begins to spread across England, the Great Plague of London. At first, it feels distant. Then it gets closer and closer. People begin to disappear. Shops close. Streets empty. Fear replaces noise. Cambridge has no choice. It shuts down. Students are sent home. Newton leaves, not knowing he is walking into the most important period of his life. Now he is completely alone. No teachers guiding him, no classmates around him, no structure to follow. Just silence. At first, the silence feels slow, empty. Days pass with nothing happening, then weeks. But slowly, something begins to build. Questions, relentless questions. Why do objects move? What makes them stop? Why do things always fall down, never up? And then a bigger question forms, one that almost feels impossible. Why doesn't the moon fall out of the sky? There is no one to answer him, no one to correct him, no one to limit his thinking. And that's when it happens. Newton makes a decision most people would never dare to make. If no one can explain the world to him, he will figure it out himself. What follows is something almost unbelievable. In isolation, in silence, with nothing but his thoughts, Newton begins to unlock ideas that will change science forever. This period will later be called his Year of Wonders, but at the time it was just a young man, alone, slowly rewriting the rules of the universe. One quiet afternoon, Newton sits outside. Nothing dramatic, no storm, no warning that history is about to change. Just silence and a single moment. Then an apple falls. Not fast, not violently, just a simple drop to the ground. Something people had seen thousands of times before and ignored. But Newton doesn't ignore it. He freezes, because to him, something about it feels strange. He doesn't see just a falling fruit. He sees a mystery hiding in plain sight. Why down? Why always down? Why not up? Why not sideways? Why does everything, without exception, move toward the earth? The question sounds simple, almost childish, but no one had ever answered it, and Newton can't let it go. He begins to imagine something invisible, something you cannot see, touch, or escape. A force. Not pushing things down, but pulling them, constantly, relentlessly, even when you don't notice it. And then his mind takes a leap most people would never make. If the earth can pull an apple, what else is it pulling? He looks up, at the sky, at the moon, and suddenly the question becomes terrifying. Why doesn't the moon fall? Or what if it already is? What if the moon is constantly falling toward the earth, but moving just fast enough to keep missing it? That idea changes everything. Because in that moment, Newton realizes something no human ever had before. The force pulling an apple to the ground is the same force holding the moon in the sky, the same force controlling planets, the same force shaping the universe. He has just connected Earth to the cosmos. And that invisible force, it will soon be known as gravity.
If this is changing how you see the world, don't just watch silently. Hit the like button, share this with someone who thinks science is boring, and subscribe for more stories like this. Because Newton's story is far from over, and it's about to get even more intense. Newton doesn't stop at gravity. For most people, that would have been enough. One discovery, one breakthrough, a lifetime achievement. But for Newton, it's only the beginning. Because once he realizes the universe follows rules, he becomes obsessed with finding all of them. Not casually, obsessively. He begins to study motion, how things move, why they move, and what secretly controls them. He watches objects roll, stop, collide. He imagines invisible forces acting on everything around him, and slowly he starts to see a pattern, a hidden system. 3 simple laws. At first, they don't look powerful. In fact, they look almost too simple. But these laws explain something shocking. Why objects stay still unless something forces them to move. Why the harder you push, the faster something goes. And why every single action always creates an equal reaction. That means nothing happens alone. Every movement, every force is part of a balance. Suddenly, motion is no longer random. It becomes predictable, controllable. For the first time in human history, someone can look at movement and calculate what will happen next. In 1687, Newton publishes Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. This isn't just a book, it's a warning and a revelation. Because inside it, Newton doesn't just describe science, he reveals the rules that everything obeys. From a falling stone to the movement of planets, the universe is no longer a mystery, it's a system, and Newton has just exposed how it works. But Newton's pursuit of knowledge comes at a cost, and not a small one. Because for Newton, observing the world isn't enough. He wants to experience it from the inside. He doesn't just study light, he turns himself into the experiment. Alone in his room, with no one watching, he takes a thin, needle-like object and brings it close to his eye, closer than anyone ever should. Then slowly he applies pressure. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to change what he sees. Suddenly colors explode across his vision, shapes bend, light twists into patterns that don't exist in the real world. Instead of stopping, Newton watches carefully, almost fascinated, almost obsessed. Most people would panic. Newton leans in, and then he goes even further. He stares directly at the sun, not once, not by accident, but repeatedly, long enough for his vision to blur, long enough for darkness to follow him even when he looks away. He is risking blindness just to understand one question: what is light really? Days pass where his sight is damaged, unstable, unreliable. But even then, he doesn't stop thinking, because to Newton, pain is temporary, but knowledge is everything. And through this dangerous obsession, he uncovers something incredible. White light isn't simple, it isn't pure, it's made up of many colors, hidden inside it all along. A discovery that changes optics forever. But by now, it's clear, Newton isn't just chasing answers anymore. He's willing to sacrifice himself to find them. But there is another side to Newton that few people ever hear about. Alone, in silence, he turns to a world most would dismiss as mystical: alchemy, the ancient, secretive practice of trying to turn ordinary metals into gold. Most people think it's nonsense, superstition, but to Newton, it is a key, a puzzle that might unlock the hidden rules of the universe. He pores over dusty, cryptic texts filled with symbols, strange diagrams, and coded instructions. He studies religious writings with the same intensity, searching for patterns, messages, and hidden truths that no one else can see. Slowly, an idea begins to take shape in his mind. The universe is not just physical, it is encrypted. Everything from stars to stones is written in a secret code, and he is determined to decode it. At this point, Newton is no longer just a scientist. He is something else entirely, a seeker of secrets, a man walking the edge between genius and obsession. Isaac Newton gives humanity some of its most important discoveries: gravity, motion, and light.
But his story is not just about brilliance. It is about obsession, isolation, and the cost of pushing the human mind to its limits. Maybe that is the truth we often ignore. The line between genius and obsession is very thin. So the next time you see something fall, remember, you are witnessing a law uncovered by a man who refused to stop asking questions. Subscribe for more stories like this. Share this video and leave a comment. Was Newton simply a genius, or was he something more? Because the deeper you look into his life, the harder that question becomes.